Do you remember the African American recipes? Those rich, authentic dishes you could only find in old cookbooks? These recipes shaped daily life, feeding families with tradition, flavor, and resilience through hard times. What stories and flavors have we lost by letting these treasures fade away? Pigtail Stew was a slow-cooked, hearty dish that turned inexpensive pork pigtails into a deeply flavorful meal treasured in many African American homes. This stew simmered the tough, gelatin-rich cuts for hours with aromatic vegetables and spices, creating a rich broth that was both comforting and economical. Historically, pigtails were a go-to ingredient during times when budgets were tight and every part of the animal was valued for nourishment. The stew reflected a resourceful cooking tradition, transforming humble ingredients into satisfying family dinners. Often accompanied by cornbread or rice, Pigtail Stew carried the flavors of the South and the resilience of a community making the most of limited resources. This recipe remains a testament to culinary ingenuity and cultural pride, showcasing how simple cuts of meat could become cherished comfort food. For many, it was not just a meal, but a link to ancestral cooking practices passed down through generations. Rediscovering this recipe reveals both the creativity and heart that defined old African American cookbooks and kitchens. Molasses Glazed Ham combined the sweet, robust flavor of molasses with savory ham to create an economical yet indulgent dish common in mid-century Southern kitchens. This recipe made use of affordable ham cuts, often shoulder or picnic hams, which were slow-cooked and then brushed generously with a sticky molasses glaze. The glaze caramelized in the oven, infusing the meat with rich sweetness, balanced by a hint of saltiness. Molasses was a staple sweetener in African American households, valued for its deep flavor and affordability compared to refined sugar. The dish was a centerpiece at family gatherings and holiday meals, symbolizing both celebration and resourcefulness. Cooking ham with molasses allowed cooks to stretch ingredients while still producing a dish that felt special and satisfying. Though less common today, this recipe reflects a culinary heritage of making the most out of pantry staples while honoring flavor. Its lingering aroma and rich taste evoke memories of home kitchens filled with warmth and tradition. Okra fritters were a beloved snack or side dish featuring chopped okra mixed into a seasoned batter and fried to golden crispiness. These fritters combined the natural sliminess of okra with crunchy breading to create a texture that was both unique and comforting. Popular in African American cooking, okra was a widely cultivated vegetable with deep roots tracing back to African cuisine. The fritters were often served alongside main dishes or enjoyed as a casual treat, showcasing the versatility of okra beyond stews and soups. The batter typically included cornmeal or flour, herbs, and spices to enhance the flavor and add a satisfying bite. Okra fritters were a practical and tasty way to celebrate local produce while creating a dish that appealed to all ages. Their crispy exterior and tender interior made them a crowd favorite at family dinners and community gatherings. This recipe exemplifies how traditional ingredients were elevated through simple, skillful preparation. Peach and cornbread pudding was a layered dessert that brought together juicy fresh peaches and moist, crumbly cornbread soaked in a sweet custard. This dish capitalized on the abundance of peaches during harvest season and the staple nature of cornbread in Southern kitchens. Home cooks layered slices of cornbread with peeled, sliced peaches before pouring a creamy mixture of eggs, milk, and sugar over the top. The pudding was then baked until golden and set, producing a warm, comforting dessert that balanced fruity sweetness with a buttery texture. This recipe represented a resourceful use of pantry staples and seasonal fruits, turning simple ingredients into a memorable treat. It was often served at family dinners and church socials, embodying both hospitality and tradition. The combination of fruit and cornbread made it a unique contribution to African American culinary heritage, showcasing creativity in desserts. Today, it remains a nostalgic favorite that connects modern palates to classic Southern flavors. Brown sugar-baked beans were a hearty side dish, featuring slow-cooked beans sweetened with brown sugar and seasoned with spices to create a rich, comforting flavor. This recipe was a common accompaniment at family gatherings, barbecues, and everyday meals, highlighting beans as a nutritious and affordable protein source. The beans were simmered gently with molasses or brown sugar, onions, and sometimes bacon or ham hocks for added depth. The sweetness balanced the earthiness of the beans, making the dish both filling and flavorful. Rooted in Southern cooking traditions, brown sugar-baked beans reflected the importance of beans in African American diets and the ingenuity in seasoning them with pantry staples. Cooking the beans low and slow allowed flavors to meld, producing a dish that could feed large families economically. This recipe also symbolized communal meals and celebrations, where food brought people together around the table. It remains a beloved comfort food with strong ties to cultural identity. Spiced sweet potato biscuits were fluffy, tender biscuits made by incorporating mashed sweet potatoes and warm spices into classic biscuit dough. This recipe blended the natural sweetness of the potatoes with cinnamon, nutmeg, or allspice to create a flavorful breakfast or side dish unique to African American kitchens. The biscuits were often served alongside savory dishes or enjoyed with butter and honey for a comforting start to the day. Sweet potatoes were a staple crop in the South, prized for their nutrition and versatility, and incorporating them into biscuits was a way to add moisture and flavor while stretching ingredients. The warm spices lent a cozy aroma and taste reminiscent of home cooking and seasonal celebrations. These biscuits showcase the creativity and love embedded in traditional baking, transforming simple pantry items into something special. The recipe remains a treasured link to culinary heritage and continues to inspire modern variations that honor its roots. Turkey neck soup was a nourishing broth-based soup made using flavorful turkey necks simmered with root vegetables and herbs to create a rich, hearty meal. This soup made use of often overlooked parts of the turkey, reflecting a tradition of resourcefulness and respect for the whole animal. The necks were slowly cooked until tender, releasing deep flavors into the broth that was both warming and sustaining. Root vegetables like carrots, onions, and potatoes added body and nutrition, making the soup a filling choice especially in colder months. Popular in African American households, this recipe symbolized thriftiness and culinary skill, turning inexpensive cuts into delicious meals. The soup was commonly served with cornbread or rice and was a staple at family tables during gatherings and everyday dinners alike. Its enduring popularity speaks to a legacy of making the most of what was available while creating comforting, flavorful food. Sweet potato and black-eyed pea salad was a refreshing cold dish that combined two classic Southern staples tossed in a tangy, flavorful dressing. This salad celebrated the natural sweetness of roasted or boiled sweet potatoes paired with the earthy taste and firm texture of black-eyed peas. Often enhanced with chopped onions, bell peppers, and herbs, the dish balanced hearty ingredients with bright acidity from vinegar or citrus-based dressings. It was a practical yet delicious way to enjoy familiar ingredients in a new form, often served during warmer months or at potlucks. Rooted in African American culinary traditions, this salad reflected the blending of nutrition and flavor, honoring the cultural importance of both sweet potatoes and black-eyed peas. Its vibrant colors and textures made it a favorite side dish, symbolizing community gatherings and family meals. The recipe offers a fresh take on heritage foods while maintaining deep ties to the past. Pickled watermelon rind was a historic Southern delicacy that used preserved watermelon rinds pickled with vinegar, sugar, and spices to create a crunchy, tangy treat. This inventive recipe transformed what was once considered waste into a flavorful snack or condiment. Pickling extended the shelf life of the rind and added layers of sweet and sour flavor, often enhanced with cinnamon sticks, cloves, or peppercorns. The dish showcased ingenuity in preservation methods, especially important before refrigeration was widespread. It was commonly served alongside savory dishes or enjoyed as a sweet and tangy accompaniment during meals. Pickled watermelon rind reflected the resourceful spirit of African American kitchens, where nothing edible was wasted. Its unique texture and flavor made it a memorable part of traditional Southern cuisine. Though less common today, this delicacy offers a fascinating glimpse into culinary history and preservation techniques. Homemade sorghum syrup was a traditional sweetener made by boiling down juice from sorghum cane into a thick, dark syrup used in baking, glazing, and as a table condiment. Sorghum syrup was prized for its robust flavor and affordability, especially in Southern African American households, where it was a pantry staple. The syrup provided a molasses-like sweetness that enhanced cornbread, cakes, and biscuits, adding moisture and depth. Its production was often a communal activity in rural areas, connecting families through shared labor and tradition. Sorghum syrup was favored during times when refined sugar was scarce or expensive, serving as a natural alternative with rich cultural significance. Recipes from old cookbooks highlight its versatility and importance in everyday cooking. Today, sorghum syrup continues to be cherished by those preserving Southern foodways and seeking authentic flavors from the past. Cornbread and sausage dressing was a savory and hearty dish made by combining crumbled cornbread with seasoned sausage, herbs, and broth to create a moist, flavorful stuffing. This classic recipe was a staple at family gatherings and holiday meals, especially during Thanksgiving, reflecting the resourceful use of staple Southern ingredients. The cornbread provided a crumbly, slightly sweet base, while the sausage added richness and spice, making the dish both comforting and satisfying. Dressing was often baked in a casserole dish until the top was golden and slightly crisp, contrasting with the soft interior. This recipe showcased how simple pantry ingredients could be transformed into a centerpiece dish that brought families together. It was prized for its ability to stretch a meal, feeding many at a low cost. The tradition of cornbread and sausage dressing highlights the creativity and depth of African American culinary heritage, blending flavors that are both rustic and refined. It remains a beloved comfort food that evokes memories of home-cooked meals and communal celebrations. Smoked turkey neck beans were a flavorful, smoky dish where beans were simmered slowly with smoked turkey necks to infuse rich, savory depth. This recipe capitalized on inexpensive turkey parts, turning them into a key ingredient that enriched the broth and added unique texture. The beans absorbed the smoky aroma and meaty essence, creating a satisfying and filling meal often served with rice or cornbread. This dish was common in African American households during times when resourcefulness was vital, making the most of every part of the bird. Seasonings such as onions, garlic, and bay leaves heightened the flavor, while the slow cooking allowed the meat to become tender and the beans to soften perfectly. Smoked turkey neck beans embodied traditional soul food values of thrift, taste, and comfort. It was a practical yet beloved way to enjoy protein-rich meals without expensive cuts. Today, it stands as a delicious reminder of culinary ingenuity and cultural resilience. Sweet potato pie cookies were bite-sized treats that captured the warm, spiced flavors of traditional sweet potato pie in a portable, easy-to-eat form. These cookies combined mashed sweet potatoes, cinnamon, nutmeg, and brown sugar with a tender cookie dough to mimic the taste and aroma of the beloved dessert. Perfect for family gatherings, potlucks, or everyday snacking, they offered a convenient way to enjoy familiar holiday flavors year-round. The recipe showed the creativity of home bakers who adapted classic dishes into new formats, making desserts accessible and fun. Sweet potato pie cookies maintained the creamy, comforting essence of the original pie, while adding a crisp, chewy texture that delighted all ages. Their popularity in African American kitchens spoke to a culture of innovation grounded in tradition. They remain a nostalgic favorite, evoking memories of warmth, celebration, and the joy of homemade sweets. Blackstrap molasses bread was a dense, nutrient-rich bread sweetened with robust blackstrap molasses, prized for its deep flavor and health benefits. This bread used whole grain flours combined with blackstrap molasses, which was valued not only for sweetness but also for its iron and mineral content. It was a practical staple during times when refined sugar was scarce or expensive, offering a wholesome alternative that added complexity to everyday meals. The bread's hearty texture made it filling and durable, perfect for breakfasts or as a side with soups and stews. Rooted in African American culinary traditions, blackstrap molasses bread reflected a connection to natural ingredients and health-conscious cooking. Its rich, slightly bittersweet flavor profile made it unique among quick breads. The recipe honored both the nutritional and cultural significance of molasses, weaving history into every loaf. Today, it remains a beloved reminder of resourceful baking and soulful flavors from the past. Peanut soup with greens was a hearty and savory dish blending ground peanuts with leafy greens like collards or spinach to create a flavorful and nutritious meal. This soup combined the creamy richness of peanuts, often toasted and ground, with the earthiness of greens, thickened into a satisfying broth. It reflected African culinary roots brought to America, where peanuts and greens became staples in Southern diets. The soup provided protein, fiber, and vitamins, making it a healthful choice during times of limited resources. Spices such as garlic, onions, and chili peppers were added to enhance depth and warmth. Peanut soup with greens was a comforting dish that nourished families, served with cornbread or rice. Its cultural significance lay in its connection to heritage and adaptability, blending available ingredients into a wholesome meal. This recipe embodies the creativity and resilience found in African American kitchens, balancing flavor and sustenance. Fried catfish nuggets were bite-sized pieces of catfish coated in seasoned cornmeal batter and deep-fried to crispy perfection. This dish was a popular snack or appetizer in Southern African American communities, prized for its crunchy exterior and tender, flaky fish inside. Catfish was abundant and affordable, making it an accessible protein source for many families. The seasoning blend often included paprika, garlic powder, and black pepper to give the nuggets a bold, savory flavor. Served with tartar sauce or hot sauce, these nuggets were a crowd pleaser at family dinners, church socials, and neighborhood gatherings. The recipe demonstrated skillful frying techniques passed down through generations, emphasizing texture and seasoning. Fried catfish nuggets captured the joy of communal eating and the love of simple, well-prepared ingredients. Today, they remain a beloved classic that highlights the rich seafood traditions of African American cooking. Collard green wraps use tender, blanched collard green leaves as a healthy and flavorful alternative to traditional bread or tortillas for wrapping seasoned fillings. This recipe embraced the natural sturdiness of collards, which held up well to fillings like spiced rice, beans, or meats. The leaves were lightly cooked to soften them without losing their vibrant color or nutrients. This dish showcased a creative way to enjoy familiar flavors in a fresh, wholesome format. It connected to African American traditions of using greens not just as side dishes, but as versatile ingredients in their own right. Collard green wraps were often served at family meals or community events, celebrated for their nutrition and cultural significance. The recipe highlighted a mindful approach to cooking that emphasized freshness, health, and flavor. This technique remains a meaningful way to honor heritage while embracing modern dietary preferences. Brown stew chicken was a slow-cooked, richly spiced chicken stew known for its deep, savory flavor and tender meat. This classic dish was a soul food staple, combining marinated chicken pieces with a blend of herbs, spices, and vegetables simmered slowly to develop intense taste. The stew's thick, flavorful sauce was often served over rice or with bread, making it a filling and comforting meal. Brown stew chicken reflected the resourceful use of available ingredients, often making tougher cuts delicious through slow cooking. Its roots traced back to Caribbean and Southern African American kitchens, symbolizing cultural fusion and culinary tradition. The dish was a centerpiece at family gatherings, embodying warmth, hospitality, and history. Today, it continues to be celebrated for its robust flavor and soulful heritage, connecting generations through shared meals and memories. Sweet potato biscuits with honey butter combined fluffy, golden biscuits made with mashed sweet potatoes and served warm with a drizzle of sweet honey-infused butter. This recipe added a sweet and savory twist to traditional biscuits, highlighting the natural sweetness of sweet potatoes and the richness of butter enhanced by honey. The biscuits were tender with a moist crumb, perfect for breakfast or as a side to savory dishes. Honey butter added a glossy sweetness that complemented the biscuit's flavor and texture beautifully. This dish reflected the creativity and resourcefulness of African American baking traditions, turning humble ingredients into special treats. Sweet potato biscuits with honey butter were often featured at family meals and celebrations, evoking a sense of comfort and indulgence. They remain a beloved classic that honors the rich agricultural and culinary heritage of the South, offering a delicious balance of flavors that delights all ages. Old-fashioned peach preserves were homemade jams made from fresh peaches, cooked down with sugar to capture the fruit's natural sweetness and preserve it for months. These preserves were a staple in many African American households where seasonal fruit was canned to extend its enjoyment year-round. The process involved simmering peaches with sugar and sometimes spices like cinnamon or cloves, then sealing the mixture in sterilized jars. This technique was essential before refrigeration was common, allowing families to enjoy summer flavors during colder months. Old-fashioned peach preserves were often spread on biscuits, cornbread, or toast, adding a burst of sweetness to daily meals. Making preserves was also a communal activity, bringing families and neighbors together during harvest time. These jars of sunshine embodied tradition, resourcefulness, and the joy of home cooking. Today, they remain a nostalgic favorite that connects modern palates with the tastes and memories of the past. Cornmeal mush cakes were a beloved Southern breakfast favorite made by shaping pan-fried cornmeal mush into crispy, golden cakes. The cornmeal mush was cooked and then sliced or scooped into patties before being fried until the outside turned crunchy while the inside remained soft and tender. This simple dish provided a hearty start to the day and was often served with syrup, butter, or savory sides. Cornmeal mush cakes were popular in African American kitchens due to their affordability and filling nature. The recipe showcased the resourcefulness of cooks turning staple ingredients into satisfying meals. It was a versatile dish, enjoyed plain or dressed up with various toppings to suit individual tastes. Cornmeal mush cakes remain a nostalgic reminder of traditional Southern breakfasts and the deep culinary heritage of the region, offering comfort and flavor that spans generations. Pickled okra was a spicy and tangy preserved vegetable treasured for its crunch and bold flavor. This recipe involved soaking fresh okra pods in a vinegar-based brine infused with garlic, dill, and hot peppers, allowing the pods to ferment slightly while maintaining their crisp texture. Pickled okra was commonly enjoyed as a snack, side dish, or condiment in Southern African American households, especially during times when fresh produce was not readily available year-round. The pickling process not only extended the shelf life of okra, but also enhanced its natural flavor with a bright, zesty kick. This preservation method reflected a deep tradition of making the most of seasonal crops and adding complexity to simple ingredients. Pickled okra's tangy bite and satisfying crunch made it a beloved staple, evoking memories of family meals and cultural heritage that continues today. Chicken gumbo with rice was a hearty, comforting stew combining tender chicken pieces, flavorful vegetables, and a rich, seasoned broth served over fluffy white rice. This classic Creole dish was a cornerstone of African American Southern cooking, blending French, African, and Native American influences into a single pot of warmth and depth. The gumbo often included the holy trinity of onions, bell peppers, and celery, along with spices like thyme and bay leaves, simmered slowly to develop complex flavors. Thickened with a dark roux, chicken gumbo was both filling and flavorful, ideal for feeding large families on a budget. The rice served alongside absorbed the savory sauce, making every bite satisfying. Chicken gumbo with rice represented a culinary tradition of community, resilience, and shared meals, treasured for its rich taste and cultural significance. It remains a beloved dish that honors the diverse roots of African American cuisine. Honey-glazed sweet potatoes were a baked dish featuring tender sweet potatoes brushed with a warm, sticky glaze made from honey and spices such as cinnamon, nutmeg, and cloves. This recipe elevated humble sweet potatoes into a festive side dish often served during holidays and special occasions. The natural sweetness of the potatoes paired beautifully with the honey glaze, creating a caramelized exterior and a soft, flavorful interior. The spices added warmth and depth, evoking comforting aromas that filled kitchens and dining rooms. Honey-glazed sweet potatoes reflected a blend of agricultural abundance and culinary creativity found in African American cooking traditions. The dish was both nourishing and indulgent, symbolizing celebration and family togetherness. It was commonly enjoyed alongside roasted meats and other Southern favorites, completing festive meals. Today, honey-glazed sweet potatoes remain a cherished classic, evoking nostalgia and honoring rich culinary heritage. Sweet cornpone was a traditional dense cornmeal bread baked until golden and hearty enough to stand as a meal accompaniment. Made from cornmeal mixed with buttermilk, eggs, and sometimes sugar or salt, this bread was a staple in many southern African American households. Its slightly sweet, grainy texture provided a satisfying contrast to savory dishes like stews, beans, and greens. The pone was baked in a cast-iron skillet or baking dish, producing a crisp crust and moist interior. This recipe showcased the importance of cornmeal as a foundational ingredient, reflecting agricultural traditions and resourcefulness. Sweet cornpone was economical, easy to make, and versatile, often eaten for breakfast or as a side throughout the day. It carried cultural significance as comfort food and a symbol of heritage, connecting generations through its simple, enduring flavor. Today, sweet cornpone remains a beloved representation of Southern baking and African American culinary history. Red velvet pound cake was a rich, dense cake variant known for its signature deep red color and classic cocoa flavor, often paired with a cream cheese or vanilla glaze. This cake was a showstopper at family celebrations and special occasions, prized for both its striking appearance and moist, tender crumb. Made with buttermilk and vinegar to react with the cocoa powder, it achieved a subtle tanginess alongside its sweet richness. The red velvet pound cake was a refined evolution of traditional pound cake recipes, incorporating flavors and colors beloved in African American baking traditions. Its dense texture made it satisfying and indulgent, ideal for slicing and serving with coffee or tea. This cake held cultural significance as a festive dessert that brought people together. Though variations have evolved, the classic red velvet pound cake remains an enduring symbol of celebration and soulful baking. Pecan Pie Bars were a portable and convenient twist on the classic pecan pie, made by baking the rich, nutty filling in a shallow pan and cutting it into individual bars. These bars offered all the signature flavors of pecan pie: sweet caramelized syrup, crunchy pecans, and buttery crust, in a more manageable format for gatherings and snacks. The recipe was especially popular in African American kitchens during holidays and potlucks, where sharing food was a communal experience. Pecan Pie Bars provided the perfect balance of gooey filling and crisp crust, with the toasted pecans adding texture and depth. This variation allowed for easier serving and transport, making it a practical favorite. The bars symbolized warmth, family tradition, and Southern hospitality. Even today, pecan pie bars remain a beloved treat that honors the rich nut and sweet heritage embedded in classic African American desserts. Cabbage and bacon skillet was a flavorful and economical side dish featuring sautéed cabbage cooked with crispy bacon bits for a smoky, savory taste. This dish was common in many African American households, especially during times when stretching ingredients was important. The cabbage provided a tender, slightly sweet vegetable base, while the bacon added richness and texture. Cooked together in a skillet, the flavors melded into a comforting and hearty accompaniment to main courses like fried chicken or pork chops. This recipe highlighted the importance of simple, accessible ingredients combined skillfully to create satisfying food. It was a practical solution that balanced nutrition, flavor, and cost. Cabbage and bacon skillet also embodied cultural cooking traditions that celebrated resourcefulness and bold tastes. Its enduring popularity reflects a deep connection to Southern home cooking and community meals. Buttermilk Pie Bars were a custardy, tangy dessert baked into bars for easy serving and sharing at family gatherings. This recipe adapted the traditional Southern buttermilk pie, known for its smooth, rich filling flavored with vanilla and a hint of lemon, into a portable format perfect for potlucks or casual meals. The bars featured a tender crust topped with a silky custard that set firmly when baked, making them easy to cut and transport. Buttermilk Pie Bars were prized for their bright flavor and creamy texture, offering a refreshing balance to richer desserts. Popular in African American kitchens, they reflected a love of simple, comforting sweets that could be made with pantry staples. This dessert represented tradition, hospitality, and the joy of sharing food with loved ones. Today, Buttermilk Pie Bars remain a cherished nod to classic Southern baking. Sweet potato casserole with marshmallows was a beloved holiday classic featuring mashed sweet potatoes baked under a layer of toasted, gooey marshmallows. This dish combined the natural sweetness and creaminess of sweet potatoes with a crunchy, sugary topping that added texture and festive flair. Often prepared for Thanksgiving or Christmas dinners, it symbolized comfort and celebration in African American homes. The casserole was typically seasoned with spices like cinnamon and nutmeg to enhance its warmth and depth. Sweet potato casserole with marshmallows balanced sweet and savory notes, making it a crowd pleaser at family gatherings. Its preparation was a cherished tradition, bringing generations together to create and enjoy the dish. Though modern tastes vary, this casserole remains an iconic reminder of holiday feasts and cultural heritage, embodying joy and togetherness around the table. Broiled grapefruit with brown sugar was a simple yet elegant side dish that warmed many hearts and kitchens. Halved grapefruits were topped generously with brown sugar, then broiled until caramelized, creating a slightly crisp, golden crust that contrasted with the juicy, tart fruit beneath. The result was a warm, zesty bite that balanced sweetness and tang in a way that felt both indulgent and healthy. This dish appeared in Betty Crocker cookbooks as a bright finish to heavier meals or as a breakfast treat for those wanting something fresh yet comforting. The caramelized sugar added depth and a subtle crunch, turning humble grapefruit into a dessert-like delight. It was especially popular during winter, when citrus was in season and the warm oven created a cozy kitchen atmosphere. The blend of warmth, tartness, and sweet caramel made this side dish memorable, and it often became a topic of conversation at the family table. It was a wonderful example of how simple ingredients could be transformed into something special with just a broiler and a little patience. Green tomato relish was one of those tangy little extras that brought bold flavor to plain meals even when the pantry was bare. Grandma would take firm, unripe tomatoes, too stubborn to ripen before the first frost, and chop them finely with onions, peppers, and vinegar. Add sugar, mustard seeds, and celery salt, and you had a thick, bright relish that woke up whatever it touched. It was spooned onto meatloaf, smeared onto sandwiches, or set in a bowl next to pork chops and roast chicken. It had that vinegary punch that made you sit up a little straighter with every bite. People canned it in glass jars and lined their shelves with it like treasure. It was a late summer ritual in many homes, part of the rhythm of putting up food for winter. Green tomato relish was born out of waste not thinking, salvaging fruit that otherwise would rot on the vine. But it also brought a surprising brightness to heavy meals. You almost never see it now, not even in farmers' markets. But anyone who tasted it remembers it sharp, sweet, and impossible to forget. 3 bean molded salad was one of those curious creations from vintage cookbooks that made vegetables and gelatin collide in the strangest way. You would take the classic 3-bean salad, green beans, wax beans, kidney beans, and suspend the whole thing in lemon or lime-flavored gelatin, set it in a mold, and proudly serve it at potlucks or family dinners. Back in the 1950s and 60s, molded salads were a rite of passage in every community cookbook, and this one was no different. It looked fancy, stretched pantry staples, and made sure not a single bean went to waste. People loved it for the bright colors, wobbly texture, and how it sat proudly next to roast meats or casseroles. It might sound a little off-putting now, but back then, molded salads were considered practical and even impressive. This one in particular packed protein, vegetables, and a little retro flair all in one strange, shimmering dish. You might not see it outside of vintage recipe cards today, but once upon a time, it was the talk of every potluck. Peanut butter and marshmallow sandwiches were one of those simple little joys that made their way into school lunches, church picnics, and kitchen tables across America. It did not take much. Just some soft sandwich bread, a good swipe of creamy peanut butter, and a generous helping of marshmallow fluff right out of the jar. The whole thing came together in under 10 minutes, but it stuck with you longer than that. It was sweet, sticky, and packed with that gooey marshmallow center that kids could not get enough of. Adults loved how fast and affordable it was, especially when grocery budgets were tight. You would spot this recipe scribbled on note cards, tucked into church cookbooks, or passed down by word of mouth from one busy home cook to another. It was a sugar rush, sure, but it was also a reminder of the quick comfort food that helped families stretch what they had. Funny how something that fast and that fun could quietly disappear from kitchen tables over time. Creamed spinach was a rich and traditional vegetable accompaniment that found its way onto many classic American dinner tables. Tender spinach leaves were cooked down and enveloped in a smooth, creamy white sauce made from butter, cream, and sometimes cheese or nutmeg. This dish was prized for its silky texture and deep, comforting flavor, making it an ideal partner for steaks, roasts, and holiday meals. Betty Crocker cookbooks frequently included creamed spinach as a reliable crowd pleaser, offering home cooks a way to elevate greens into a luxurious side dish. The creaminess softened the sometimes bitter edge of spinach, creating a luscious mouthfeel that felt indulgent yet nourishing. Its glossy, pale green appearance made it visually inviting, and its rich flavor helped balance hearty mains. Creamed spinach remains a symbol of timeless comfort food, showcasing how simple ingredients can create a dish full of warmth and nostalgia. Scalloped corn casserole was one of those cozy, golden-topped dishes that never needed a main course to shine. It started with sweet corn, fresh, canned, or creamed, mixed with milk, eggs, a bit of sugar, and crushed saltine crackers or breadcrumbs. Then it was baked until it set into a soft, custard-like center with a crispy, buttery top. This dish showed up at potlucks, funerals, holiday dinners, anywhere people came together and needed something warm and familiar. You did not need a lot of money to make it, just pantry staples and a steady oven. The smell alone was enough to call everyone to the table. Some versions had chopped peppers or bits of onion, others stayed simple and sweet. But no matter how you made it, it had the same purpose: comfort. Scalloped corn casserole made vegetables feel indulgent, like something you could take pride in bringing to a neighbor's house. It was the kind of dish that lived in handwritten notes and passed down recipes, not cookbooks with glossy photos. And somewhere along the way, it got pushed aside for flashier sides. But for those who remember, it will always be the taste of home. Macaroni and tomatoes was the forgotten side that kept dinner plates full when grocery budgets were stretched thin. You would boil macaroni, toss it with stewed tomatoes, a pat of butter, and maybe onions or cheese if you had extra. It was not glamorous, but it got the job done. You could find this simple pasta side in old community cookbooks from the 40s through the 70s, tucked between casserole recipes and Jell-O molds. Families loved it because it used pantry staples, cost little, and made meals stretch farther. It showed up next to pork chops, meatloaf, or whatever leftovers you had. Macaroni and tomatoes was the quiet hero of the table, filling bellies when money was tight. You do not see it much now, but in its day, it was a practical filling side that showed how far folks could go with a box of pasta and a can of tomatoes. Pimento cheese on saltines was a southern staple that turned a few pantry ingredients into a quick, satisfying snack when groceries were running thin. You mixed up pimento cheese, usually some shredded cheddar, mayonnaise, chopped pimentos, and spread it over saltine crackers. That was it. 10 minutes or less, and you had something creamy, salty, and packed with flavor to hold you over until dinner. It might sound simple now, but back then, this little recipe kept homes running when budgets were stretched and time was short. The saltines gave it crunch, the pimento cheese added richness, and together they made a snack that showed up at school lunches, church picnics, or as a quick fix on busy afternoons. You would find this recipe scribbled onto old note cards, tucked in faded cookbooks, or passed down through generations of families who knew how to make the most of what they had. It might be forgotten today, but for plenty of folks back then, pimento cheese on saltines was a fast, filling favorite that saved the day more than once. Eggplant Parmesan bites were small baked slices of eggplant layered with tomato sauce and cheese, creating finger food that was both indulgent and convenient. These bite-sized delights appeared in Betty Crocker cookbooks as an appetizer or side dish that offered a taste of Italian-inspired comfort food. The eggplant slices were breaded and baked or lightly fried, then topped with rich tomato sauce and melted mozzarella or Parmesan cheese. The layering of flavors and textures made for a satisfying bite that was crispy on the edges and gooey on top. Eggplant parmesan bites were popular at parties and family dinners, providing a crowd-pleasing option that was easy to serve and eat. Their warm, savory profile made them a beloved side that added a touch of elegance without fuss. This dish reflected the mid-century American embrace of international flavors adapted to home cooking traditions. Succotash with lima beans was not just a dish, it was a Depression-era survival tool that somehow made it into Grandma's regular rotation. Sweet corn and soft lima beans were simmered together in a little butter or cream, sometimes with bell peppers or onions tossed in for good measure. It was filling, cheap, and surprisingly nutritious, which made it perfect for families trying to stretch every last dime. Succotash had deep roots too, traced back to Native American cooking, and became especially popular in the South and Midwest. If your grandma had a victory garden, you probably had succotash at least once a week. It was served warm, spooned right from the pot, and though it was never flashy, it was honest food. A dish that said, "We have enough to share." Some people added bacon or ham to punch it up, others kept it plain and let the vegetables speak. But the core recipe stayed the same for generations. These days, succotash barely makes an appearance outside of history books or heritage festivals. Corn pudding casserole was the side dish that made even the humblest dinner plate feel warm and complete. If you flipped through old recipe cards tucked behind flour jars, chances are this one was written in your grandmother's handwriting. It combined sweet corn, butter, eggs, and milk into a creamy bake that sat proudly next to roast ham or pork chops. It was easy, affordable, and filled bellies, making it a go-to for potlucks, church suppers, and holidays. The top baked up golden brown, the inside stayed soft and rich, and every bite reminded you how folks pulled meals together from what they had. Corn pudding casserole carried meals through tough times, earning its place in kitchens from the Depression to the 70s. You do not see it much now, but back then, that creamy baked corn meant comfort on a plate. Cheesy cauliflower gratin was a rich and indulgent vegetable side that found a special place in many vintage kitchens. Tender cauliflower florets were smothered in a creamy, cheesy sauce before being baked under a crispy layer of toasted breadcrumbs. This gratin was a perfect example of comfort food, combining the mild flavor of cauliflower with the lusciousness of melted cheese and a golden, crunchy top. Betty Crocker cookbooks featured this dish as a versatile accompaniment for both everyday meals and holiday feasts. Its creamy texture and cheesy goodness made it a hit with both children and adults, especially those who might usually shy away from vegetables. The gratin's warm, bubbling surface was a welcome sight at any dinner table, signaling a dish full of hearty flavor and homestyle care. This recipe demonstrated how simple vegetables could be transformed into something special and satisfying, making cheesy cauliflower gratin a nostalgic classic worth revisiting. Peas and pearl onions were a staple of wintertime cooking, especially when fresh vegetables were hard to come by. Grandma knew how to make something special out of pantry basics, and this dish was proof. Canned or frozen peas were gently warmed with tender pearl onions, often from a jar, and simmered in butter or a light cream sauce. The result was simple but comforting, with just enough sweetness and bite to sit perfectly alongside roast turkey or baked ham. You would see it on holiday tables, often scooped out of a deep ceramic dish with a worn wooden spoon. Some families added herbs like thyme or parsley, but the heart of the recipe never changed. It was about taking small, soft vegetables and giving them care, warmth, and just a bit of love. Peas and pearl onions did not shout for attention. They were the quiet kind of dish that stuck with you anyway. They are almost never made anymore, except by the rare home cook flipping through a dusty cookbook. But for the folks who remember, one bite can bring back a dozen meals from long ago. Tomato aspic with celery and olives was one of those curious gelatin-based sides that ruled vintage cookbooks but slipped quietly off dinner tables as times changed. You would take savory tomato juice or seasoned broth, mix it with gelatin, and suspend chopped celery, olives, and sometimes hard-boiled eggs inside, Then chill it in a mold until firm. It sounds strange now, but back in the 1950s and 60s, molded salads were a symbol of pride and resourcefulness, showing up at luncheons, holiday dinners, and potlucks all across America. Tomato aspic was considered elegant, even a little fancy, turning pantry staples into a glossy, structured side that balanced out roast meats, fried chicken, or whatever leftovers you had. Families leaned on recipes like this to stretch groceries and bring something unique to the table without spending a fortune. It looked impressive, it used affordable ingredients, and it made even the simplest meal feel dressed up. You might not see tomato aspic much today outside of retro cookbooks or quirky food blogs, but back then, it was proof that creativity and practicality ruled the kitchen, no matter how odd the presentation looked. Green bean and egg salad was one of those quick, cold meals that filled plates fast and stretched what little food families had during tough times. You opened a can of green beans, sliced up some boiled eggs, tossed it all together with mayonnaise, and that was it. A little creamy, a little savory, and ready in under 10 minutes. It might not sound fancy today, but back then, this quick salad showed up at church potlucks, summer picnics, and weekday lunches when the pantry was running low. The eggs added protein, the beans filled you up, and the mayo brought it all together in a creamy, satisfying bite. Families leaned on recipes like this because they used simple ingredients that were always on hand and turned them into meals that kept everyone fed. You would find this one scribbled in old cookbooks, passed along by neighbors, or quietly tucked into Grandma's collection of quick meal fixes. It might be forgotten now, but for plenty of families back then, green bean and egg salad was a go-to plate that saved time, money, and groceries. Spinach timbales were a dish that made vegetables feel like something grand. Grandma would mix cooked spinach with eggs, cream, and a handful of breadcrumbs, pour the mixture into small molds, and bake them until they puffed and set. The result was a delicate custard-like mound that held its shape and tasted rich and savory. It looked fancy, but was often made from leftovers or frozen spinach, which made it even more impressive. These little timballs were served warm with a drizzle of cheese sauce or gravy and were a regular part of dinner parties or special Sunday meals. They had that old-fashioned air of formality that came from caring about presentation, even when money was tight. Spinach timbales were quiet showstoppers, the kind of dish that made people stop and take note without saying a word. They are rarely seen today outside of vintage cookbooks or culinary schools, but for a time they were proof that vegetables could be elegant too. Maybe we would all eat more greens if they were served like this again. Roasted Brussels sprouts with bacon were a caramelized, savory side that brought together crispy, tender Brussels sprouts and smoky bacon bits in a perfect marriage of flavors. This dish was a favorite in Betty Crocker cookbooks for its ability to transform a sometimes overlooked vegetable into a crowd-pleasing classic. The sprouts were roasted until their outer leaves turned crisp and golden, while the insides remained tender and sweet. Tossed with crumbled, crispy bacon, the combination delivered smoky richness that balanced the sprouts' natural earthiness and slight bitterness. This side was often served at family dinners and holiday feasts, praised for its simplicity and bold flavor. It perfectly captured the mid-century American love for hearty, flavorful vegetables paired with savory meats. Roasted Brussels sprouts with bacon remains a nostalgic staple that continues to delight those seeking comfort with a little crunch and smoky depth. German potato salad was never meant to be cold, and that was the beauty of it. Grandma would boil red potatoes until tender, then toss them with crisp bacon, diced onions, and a sharp vinegary dressing while everything was still warm. The result was tangy, salty, and just a little sweet, rich from the bacon but lifted by the vinegar. It was a staple at summer picnics and church potlucks, served straight from the pan or kept warm under foil. Unlike the creamy versions most people know today, this one had no mayonnaise and needed no chilling. It felt more like a real dish than a filler side, and it paired perfectly with sausages, roast chicken, or just a good slice of rye bread. You might find a recipe scribbled in pencil in the back of Grandma's cookbook, passed down from a German aunt or neighbor. It was hearty, practical, and impossible to stop eating once you started. These days, it is rare to find someone who still makes it from scratch. But the warmth, both literal and emotional, is something no cold potato salad can match. Watergate salad, also known as pistachio delight, was one of those playful pastel green sides that walked the line between dessert and salad, confusing generations of potluck guests along the way. You would mix instant pistachio pudding with whipped topping, marshmallows, canned pineapple, and chopped nuts, fold it all together, and serve it chilled in a big glass bowl that practically screamed retro kitsch. It sounds more like a dessert, but back in the 1970s, this fluffy, sweet salad showed up next to roast ham, turkey, and casseroles at family dinners and holiday gatherings. Watergate salad came straight from the pages of vintage cookbooks, celebrated for how it turned inexpensive pantry staples into a crowd pleaser with hardly any effort. It earned its place at the table by stretching ingredients, adding color, and giving every meal a playful, sugary twist. You might not see it much today outside of retro recipe revivals, but once upon a time, this fluffy green salad meant you brought your best, even if it doubled as dessert. Strange by today's standards, but back then, it was a potluck must-have that turned heads and satisfied sweet tooths. Mashed rutabagas were a less common but beloved vintage side dish that brought a buttery, creamy twist to a hearty root vegetable. This mashed treat was a staple in many Betty Crocker cookbooks, especially during times when variety was sought beyond the usual potatoes. Rutabagas, with their slightly sweet and earthy flavor, were boiled and mashed with butter and cream to create a smooth, comforting side that paired beautifully with roasted meats and stews. Their pale yellow color and mild taste made them a subtle yet satisfying addition to any plate. Unlike the more familiar mashed potatoes, rutabagas offered a slightly different texture and a hint of natural sweetness that made the dish feel special. It was a side that echoed simpler times and frugal kitchens, where every ingredient was stretched and savored. Mashed rutabagas stood as a testament to vintage American cooking's ability to find comfort in unexpected places. Tomato aspic salad was one of those strange creations that could only have come from a time when gelatin ruled the kitchen. It was a savory molded dish, tomato juice thickened with unflavored gelatin, then loaded with chopped celery, olives, or green peppers, depending on what Grandma had on hand. The result? A firm, wobbly side dish served cold, usually cut into slices or cubes, and placed proudly next to roast beef or deviled eggs. People either adored it or found it baffling, but no one forgot it. Tomato aspic was especially popular at luncheons, bridge clubs, and church picnics, where presentation mattered just as much as taste. It looked refined, in a retro sort of way, and was always served with a smile. The tangy, lightly spicy flavor made it oddly refreshing in the summertime, even if no one asked for seconds. Some recipes even added a dab of mayonnaise on top to finish the look. Today, tomato aspic is more often the butt of jokes than a dish on the menu. But for those who grew up with it, it brings back memories of glass dishes, ruffled tablecloths, and a different kind of dining pride. Cornflake-topped vegetable medley was the crunchy, thrifty side dish that showed up at potlucks and family dinners, straight from those old spiral-bound cookbooks. You would take canned or frozen vegetables, stir them with cream sauce, pour it into a casserole dish, and finish it with a layer of crushed cornflakes before baking. It sounds unusual now, but back then, this topping was genius. It added crunch, stretched ingredients, and turned plain vegetables into something hearty. Cornflake-topped vegetable medley earned its spot at the table because it made basic produce feel dressed up enough for guests or holidays. It sat proudly next to meatloaf, roast turkey, or ham, offering crispy contrast to heavier mains. Families loved it for how easy it was to throw together, how well it traveled to potlucks, and how much kids liked the crunchy topping. You hardly see it now, but back then, that golden cornflake crust meant you brought your best, even when groceries were tight. It proved simple ingredients could still make a meal feel special and complete. Cold canned salmon salad was one of those quick, thrifty meals that turned an inexpensive pantry staple into a fast, protein-packed plate when groceries were running low. You flaked canned salmon into a bowl, stirred in mayonnaise, and chopped celery if you had it, and served it up cold. That was all there was to it. Fast, simple, and surprisingly satisfying when families needed something filling in a hurry. It might not sound exciting now, but back then, this recipe showed up in lunchboxes, on picnic tables, or tucked onto a dinner plate when meat was scarce and time was tight. The salmon added protein, the mayo brought it all together, and the celery gave it crunch if you were lucky enough to have some in the fridge. Families leaned on meals like this to stretch their groceries and keep everyone full without much effort. You would find cold canned salmon salad scribbled onto old recipe cards, passed down by neighbors, or quietly tucked into grandma's collection of forgotten quick meals. It might be overlooked now, but back then this was a reliable 10-minute fix when money was tight. Cheese and pineapple skewers were a fun and flavorful appetizer side that perfectly blended sweet and savory notes. Cubed cheese, often cheddar or a mild American variety, was paired with juicy pineapple chunks on toothpicks, creating bite-sized delights that were both refreshing and rich. This combination featured prominently in Betty Crocker cookbooks as a party favorite and an easy-to-prepare hors d'oeuvre. The sharpness of the cheese contrasted with the tropical sweetness of the pineapple, making every bite a balanced explosion of flavors. These skewers were popular at potlucks, holiday gatherings, and casual get-togethers, offering a colorful and attractive option that was simple yet sophisticated. The ease of assembly made them a go-to for hosts wanting to impress without fuss. Their combination of textures, creamy cheese and juicy fruit, made for an unexpectedly delightful treat that could easily double as a side dish or a snack. Harvard beets were the kind of side dish you either loved with all your heart or politely pushed around the plate. But back in Grandma's day, they were something special. Tender beets, simmered in a glossy, sweet and sour sauce made of sugar, vinegar, and a touch of butter or cornstarch for thickness. Sometimes cloves or allspice were added, giving them a spiced holiday feel that filled the room the moment they hit the stove. These beets had a deep ruby color that practically glowed in the bowl, and they were often served warm alongside pot roast or meatloaf. You would see them at church suppers, family holidays, or just because someone had canned a good harvest. They were a lesson in thrift, too, stretching garden beets through the winter with just a few pantry ingredients. People used to say Harvard beets were named after the university, but no one ever really cared. What mattered was that they gave even humble root vegetables a bit of elegance and shine. These days, you are more likely to see beets roasted with goat cheese than nestled in a sticky glaze. Cucumber and sour cream slaw was the kind of cool, crisp side dish that showed up quietly at family picnics, luncheons, and Sunday dinners long before store-bought coleslaw took over. It was simple to make, but packed the refreshing punch you wanted next to a hot, heavy meal. Thin cucumber slices were tossed in sour cream, vinegar, dill, and sometimes a little sugar, creating a creamy, tangy salad that balanced fried chicken, pork chops, or pot roast. This was a summertime favorite, straight from those old cookbooks where frugality ruled the kitchen. Folks needed side dishes that stretched ingredients but still made meals feel whole, especially when gardens overflowed with cucumbers. You would find this slaw chilling in glass bowls at potlucks and reunions, cooling everyone off after long days in stuffy kitchens. It is nearly forgotten now, but for decades, this creamy cucumber salad was the quiet hero of summer tables, showing how something simple like a cucumber and sour cream could make a meal feel complete. Hot milk cake. Slices with butter were a quick, sweet fix that turned leftover dessert into a satisfying breakfast or afternoon snack with hardly any effort. You sliced up leftover hot milk cake, toasted it gently or warmed it up, and slathered it with butter. That was it. 10 minutes or less, and you had a rich, soft, slightly sweet bite that kept everyone happy when groceries were tight and meals had to stretch. It sounds simple, but back then, this little treat was a kitchen staple, especially in homes that believed nothing should go to waste. The hot milk cake gave it sweetness, the butter added richness, and together they turned leftovers into something new and satisfying. You would find this recipe scribbled in old cookbooks, passed down through generations, or quietly shared between neighbors looking for ways to make every crumb count. It might be forgotten today, but for plenty of families back then, hot milk cake slices with butter were a warm, comforting reminder that even the smallest leftovers could be turned into something worth savoring. Now, tell us your favorite recipe below, like if you enjoyed it, and subscribe for more tasty traditions.